And welcome back to the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner, as always. And today I am super excited to have my buddy Kevin Tumlinson on the show with me. Uh, Kevin is one of my favorite authors, and his Dan Kotler series, if you love thrillers and archaeolo- archaeological thrillers as much as I do, this is a series that you must get in, follow, and, Kevin just does exactly what I love. And welcome to the show, Kevin.
Well, thanks, Hank. I really appreciate it. Thank you for
You're
the kind words.
you're so welcome. Kevin is also the director of marketing at
Yeah.
Drafted Digital,
hmm
and we'll talk all about that in a little bit. But Kevin, I have known you long enough to know when you used to write science fiction
Yeah.
as well as thrillers and stuff. But
And I still dabble.
yeah,
I
of
still,
course,
every now and then. Yeah.
well, it's an interesting discussion because um if you find a niche that you like and that you're getting um some positive feedback,
Yeah.
and a lot of folks will tell you focus on what sells. Don't go doing other stuff when you found an audience here. But as with, I think most authors are wide readers as well, or at
Yeah.
least I hope they are.
Yeah.
And I love to read science fiction. I love to read fantasy. I love to read thrillers, and I'm at varying degrees of being good at writing any of those genres. But I love to read them.
Yeah.
So um, how did you land on archaeological thrillers, first off, and how do you feel about that whole conundrum of writing broadly versus
Yeah.
narrowing down a
Well,
niche?
it's ironic you said the word conundrum,
Yeah.
because the founder of Conundrum Publishing, Nick Thacker, is the reason that I started
I love
writing.
Nick.
I don't know if that was meant to be a segue or not, Hank, but that you rolled right into it. Yeah. So Nick Thacker, he and I, so I bought him on the internet as a friend, back in like 2013 for like $200. I was looking at whether or not I should add author coaching as part of my business.
Yeah.
And I did for a time, but I was reaching out to author coaches I was finding online and paying them for a session just to,
Yeah.
just to kind of feel them out. And I paid him for a session, and then we just ended up hitting it off and started co-writing some stuff together. And then we started doing a podcast together called Self-Publishing Answers. And we were on air close to, I think, 2015 or so. And he dared me to write a thriller novel because that was his genre. And he thought I'd do really well at it, but he just sort of dared me to, and I took the dare. And I wrote my first thriller was the Coelho Medallion, and that introduced Dan Kotler as an archaeologist and an FBI consultant, and it did very well and just took off from there. So, yeah. So the thing is, and I said this from the beginning, I write character-driven fiction,
Right.
and I always told people, like, when you tell someone you write science fiction, the response overwhelmingly tends to be, well, I don't really read science fiction. I don't like spaceships and robots or whatever.
Right.
And like, my characters, this is what I would always say as a justification. Like, my characters, you could take my characters out of that sci-fi story and put them in, Victorian England.
Right.
It would be the same story. And this was a chance to kind of put my money where my mouth was. If my characters are the core of the story and it doesn't matter what their setting is, then switching genres was no big deal. And it turned out it really wasn't. I mean, like I said, I still dabble
right
in sci-fi. So
were you a fan of that genre?
Well, yes, in a lot of ways. Mostly a fan of the film version of that genre.
Yeah.
With like Indiana Jones, and I had read quite a few thriller novels that I now sort of consider core to my education. So stuff by Dan Brown. I had actually interviewed Dan Brown on the radio years ago before he wrote Da Vinci Code, and my show has a mention in the foreword for Angels and Demons.
Wow.
So, of course I read that. And then
Right.
I read Da Vinci Code, and I saw the
Yeah.
films, and I watched National Treasure and Indiana Jones. And so, I had this love for the action adventure thriller.
Right.
And the archaeological thriller, that genre in particular, was one I thought I could get a lot of play out of. And I absolutely have. I mean, I'm 12 books in, and on that, just that series, 12 books in that series, plus 3 or 4 novellas and short stories, and 70 books total at this point, I think.
That's
Or
insane.
just shy of 70.
I was just about to ask you, haven't you published like 40 books? And I guess that's how outdated my
That was
counter
my
is.
answer for a very long time, and I've really been stepping things up. And it's as always very hard to put an actual number on that, because there's always books in various stages of publishing.
Yeah.
But I'm on a kick right now where I'm like, I've committed to doing another dare from Nick Thacker. I've committed to try to knock out 15 books over the next 20 weeks. And
That's insane.
yeah,
15 books in 20 weeks.
Yeah. So I'm one down. Got another one nearly finished after starting last Tuesday.
So is there any trick to being that prolific?
There are a lot of tricks
Yeah.
that can make you that prolific. The biggest one, the most reliable one, is to sit down every single day and hit a word target. And
Yeah, but we don't want to hear that. We want to.
Yeah,
hear
no one wants to hear that. So if you want the magic, so first you need the blood of a virgin. You need
check
and a twice ripe papaya. No, there's no. I wish there were a magic formula. I will say Nick and Joanna Penn and some other authors that I run with in this space. They are more and more often using dictation to do, like 5,000 words an hour.
Yeah.
And
have you tried it?
I tried dictation. I've tried it a few times. I can't seem to mesh with it. But the problem for me is 5,000 an hour is about what I write normally. So
Right.
I'm not gaining anything if I'm only doing 5,000 an hour.
Right.
Maybe saving myself some carpal tunnel damage or something.
Yeah.
And I don't drive or anything. So, Nick uses drive time when he takes his kids to school or his wife to work or whatever. He takes the long way and he narrates a book. And that's how he's knocking out a book a week. And, Joanna is doing pretty much the same, so it's just, actually, I don't know. I think she takes walks and things. Like Kevin J. Anderson does the same thing. He goes and hikes in the mountains in Colorado and dictates the next Dune book while overlooking, these beautiful mountain vistas and stuff. I mean, maybe if that was my
yeah, and I've heard some of his dictation samples, and they are pristine. Like,
really?
I don't think that way. I think like through my fingers. Almost like I need to.
That's the thing, and I'm trained to do that after decades. I'm about to turn 50 years old, man. I mean, I've been typing since I was, I believe I started typing, like actual touch typing, at like 13 or 14 years old.
Same. I turned 50 this past fall, and I started. We grew up in the home computer revolution. I had a TRS-80 computer and a Commodore 64. And we all learned to type that way, and then took typing in high school, actual typing on a IBM Selectric.
Oh, IBM Selectric, the big blue IBM, weighed 200 pounds.
Yeah. There was something that you put your fingers on the keyboard and you felt the vibration of that motor inside.
That's what I drove right there, buddy. That's a V8 right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. And that was, for the longest time, I've joked that was the only marketable skill I ever got in high school, which is probably true.
Right.
Probably not far from the truth. But typing is something. I'm a very fast typist, I've slowed down a little as I'm not. I used to I'm famous for pushing myself to see how much I can produce. I'm famous for it. I wrote a book in a day. I think you're aware.
I remember that. Yeah.
I'm writing the sequel to that book now, and I'm writing it in a week. So I'm not replicating the process, but I am hopefully replicating the success of it. But typing was always, it's so natural for me. Like, I watched Joanna Penn. I watched a video with her about dictation, and that was one of the things she said, is that she flows more freely with dictation, because as she's typing, she's like, well, is that the right word? Do I need to rephrase that? I got a typo, and that halts her. I don't have that issue at all when I type. When I type, it goes straight from that part of my brain that's constructing the sentence to the screen. I mean, it's almost no gap in between. And I've done that with dictation. I experimented just yesterday. I experimented again. I have this little recorder here. If you're watching on screen or something, you can see it's I have several of these Zoom products, and I don't use them for much anymore. And Nick and I have been talking. I thought, well, I'll try it out. I had to go run an errand. And so I dictated an opening scene for a book into it, and it flowed very well. It was the same, vibe as what I would write, but it felt so awkward, and every little bump in the road shows up, and it just it's not the experience for me. It's not the writing experience, but I think as a tool for writers to become more, productive and prolific, it's an amazing thing. And I think anything that helps you produce the book, just like an audiobook is still reading, narrating is still writing. And I think that if it helps you produce your story and get it out to your reader, then it is absolutely the right way to go. But it just isn't for me. I don't think it's for me.
Do you are you a plotter or a pantser? Which camp do you fall in?
I am so far in the pantser camp that Plotterville is a distant memory. I think I've plotted exactly 2 books in my life. Both were terrible. One of them was the book that actually got me a publishing contract, a traditional contract, back in like 2006. Wow. I plotted that because they demanded it. And there's a whole tragic story behind, not getting that book published. Yeah. But I didn't like the process. I didn't like the result, and I have pantsed every book ever since. So just the way I work.
The argument, the pushback that you get from plotters when you say stuff like that is, well, you're just going to bog down and you're going to spend all this wasted time thinking about what to do next when you could have just planned it out to begin with. But you obviously don't have that problem.
No, I have a process to get around that problem.
Okay, please share.
And it is, I stole this idea from Dean Wesley Smith. If you haven't read Writing into the Dark, right?
I knew where you're going.
He has what he calls cycling. I modified it slightly into what I call looping. But cycling, he writes 500 words, he cycles back, edits, and rewrites, and continues on. And in that way, he's got continuous momentum through the whole story. I use what I call looping, which is, I'm writing a lot more per day now, but for the longest time, like I set my word target at like 2,000 words, which I think is pretty reasonable for most people. Sure. But whatever works for you is your word count. Whatever you can produce is your word count. But let's say that it's 1,000 words a day. So I would write my 1,000 words that day, and then put it away and go about my regularly scheduled life. And then I'd loop back the next day and read and edit that 1,000 words before continuing on to do my next 1,000. And I actually count any words I add in my total for the day. So if my goal is to do another 1,000 words that day, and I add 500 when I go back and rewrite, then that's 500 I've added so far, and now I need 500 more. And that is a way to continuously add energy and momentum back to the writing, get past blocks, get past stumbles, Everyone is going to have that stumble. I don't care if you plot or pants. It doesn't matter. If you're plotting, you're going to come to a point where you're plotting where you don't know what to put next, and you're going to spend that time. I like to do it on the fly because I can go back if I really get stuck, Hank. If I really get stuck, I loop all the way back to the beginning and I read and rewrite the whole book up to the point where I stopped. And by that point, I've got all the momentum in the world, and I go on and finish the book. And that happens pretty regularly. But tell me how it's any different. If you plot and you're writing the book, you're going to have to go back and reread and edit and rewrite anyway.
Right.
So I'm just doing that as part of the writing process. And what I end up with is a much richer, deeper story, much more intricate, because, you know, I'll write something in chapter 22 that I didn't set up. So when I loop back to re-edit, I know, okay, in chapter 5, I need to add something about this. And so, you know, I know how it's going to end. That's the same thing as plotting. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing it longhand. And I think that for me, the hang up with plotting has always been that once I've outlined the story, it feels complete. And so I've got I don't have the energy to go write it now. You know, I know the ending, so I don't want to write it. I rarely ever know the ending of my books. I don't know until they're done. So
my friend Steve Bowyer calls that the onion method of writing. He'll write through a storyline and loop back, and then add details and go back and just add layers and layers to it.
I like to think of it as I remember hearing a story years ago about I forget what they called it, but it's all day stew is what we always called it, right? And there would be these chefs, famous chefs in, like, you know, Paris and Italy and places. And what they would have is a big kettle over the fire, and whatever they prepared on the menu that day, whatever scraps of it were left over went into that kettle. And so what you had, and it just cooked all day long. And then at the end of the day, that was typically the meal that the chef staff and their families had, right? But occasionally they'd put it on the menu, like all day stew, all day soup, you know, and someone would order it, and it would be different every time.
Right.
But it was built up over time by just adding whatever you had, right? Going back and editing. That's the same process for me. I've got my base stool, my bouillon, you know, I've got all that is sitting there, and all I'm doing is going back and throwing in new ideas or new, you know, information or whatever to make it a richer, a more delicious story.
So does that mean at the end of your first draft, you wind up with a pretty clean first draft because you've been cycling back through the whole way, looping back?
Pretty clean. I'm not going to say it's ready to print. I once I've got it, I run it through what I call my edit stack, which is several different editing like tools and an editing team. So I have a street team. They're basically ARC readers or beta readers, and so I run everything through. I used to have other things in the stack. Now it's a slimmer stack, but it still works really well. But I run, you know, first thing you run is the built-in. I use Scrivener, so I run the built-in grammar and spelling check from Scrivener. I do a find and replace for double spaces because that's something I sometimes inadvertently put in still these days. Period, double space, and you know, and I do other little checks like, okay, did I consistently spell this guy's name right? You know, I do that. Yeah. And then I open it in Pro Writing Aid, and in Pro Writing Aid, that'll open the actual Scrivener file for me and edit it directly. So I run that check, spend some time going through each of the things it found, and you have to use your human brain to judge whether or not those corrections are right. You know, you can't just depend on it. Also, it tends to default to British English. So I have to, sometimes it gets mad at me if I've gone one way or the other, but I'm inconsistent, you know? So I do that. And when that's done, I mean, I used to run it through Microsoft Word's spelling and grammar check, and sometimes I will. But by that point, it's pretty clean. I send it
Yeah.
to my street team, and I give them a deadline on when I need it back, and they get it back with corrections, and then I make those corrections right in Scrivener. So it's a good process. I mean, it by no means does it catch everything every time.
Mhm.
I'll still get people who will contact me and say, "Hey, you used the wrong to or the wrong there or whatever, inadvertently or whatever." Weak. That's the one I've been nailed on a few times. I will for some reason type WEEK when I mean WEAK like 85% of the time. But
Well, we had Lauren Moore on last week, who's an indie editor, and one of the things we talked about is when you're going through the manuscript, once you see that wrong word like
yeah,
3 times or something, your brain just ignores it, and
yeah,
to you it looks perfectly right. There's
right.
you can't even see it until it's brought to your attention.
Oh, I've had people point things out that I'm like, oh, there's no way. There's no way something came along and changed that after the fact, because I've read that sentence 1,000 times and never saw that I used that word or whatever.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it happens, but
Yeah.
that's the great thing, by the way, about being an indie author versus being traditional, is that we get to very quickly fix those problems.
Right.
And if
Exactly.
you think that stuff doesn't show up in traditionally published books, you
Oh,
are sadly mistaken. Like I'm reading the Celestine Prophecy. I don't know if you've ever heard
yeah.
of that book.
Yeah.
James Redfield. It's a book that's been around since the 90s,
Right.
and it's had multiple re-releases. And I am still finding tons of typos
Isn't that
in the
funny?
book. Yeah. And that's a New York Times bestseller a couple of times
Yeah,
over.
many times
And
over. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it happens, you know?
That's so funny. Well, another thing, since we're talking about editing, one thing we talked with Lauren about is the difference between line editing and developmental editing and
Yeah.
all of that. Are you're far enough in your author career and in your genre that
Yeah.
developmental edits are probably not a thing that you
Yeah.
worry about
I
these
don't.
days. Yeah.
You know, I've never seen the value in a developmental edit personally. For me, I would, and maybe that's arrogance on my part. And if you're one of my readers and you disagree, I completely understand. But I've never felt comfortable. I've run at least one book through a developmental editor, and the edits I got back did not make the story stronger to me.
Mm,
Now that's a one-off thing. Maybe I had the
yeah.
wrong editor. All kinds of reasons why you might not want to do that. I happened to have like a freebie with this service. But I think your developmental editor should be your reader. You know, they should let you know when your story is not working, and
Yeah.
when you've got to. And I've had that happen. Like I've had readers come back and say, you know, this latest book, for example, in the Kotler series, a lot of people complained that there was too much psychology. That's what they said. And I found that really fascinating, because like that was actually kind of the point of that. But they're not responding to it. So next book, no in-depth psychology. But all that said, now there is an audience for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that book might just appeal to, you know, people who read psychological thrillers, for
Yeah.
example. They're just they're maybe there's not enough crossover with the archaeological thriller audience.
Well, and the good part about where you are in your career and with Kotler specifically is that if I don't like the newest Kotler book,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm going to read the next one anyway
Right. Right.
because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And that's one thing when you start getting that buy-in, your readers will give you the leeway to try new things. As
Yeah.
long as you're not just completely in left field, I'm going to come back and see what Kotler's up to next. I mean,
Well,
that's just a given.
the secret there is, and this is something I tell authors. Now, I work literally, and I'm not exaggerating, I've worked with hundreds of thousands of authors.
Yeah.
To start and build and grow their publishing careers. And that's one of the things I I tell them is you need to make sure that you are marketing yourself and building a brand as the author rather than marketing and branding the books. Because if you ever do shift gears, I mean, this stuff happens. Look at even J.K. Rowling shifted and wrote a I don't know what you would call that. Casual Vacancy is
the
not
crime thriller.
It's like a crime. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a lightweight crime thriller kind of thing.
Yeah, the kind of gumshoe detective.
Yeah, and you know, things shift. Sometimes you want to write something different. Sometimes you want to, you know, sometimes the market demands something a little different, and you don't want to be caught in the position of, you know, well, I only write, you know, archaeological thrillers.
Right.
So I'm out of luck. I can't write that climate thriller that person has requested, you know. So
I love that series that she publishes under the name Robert Galbraith. Is that right?
Is that right?
I
didn't even
think
know it was a series.
It's I think there's like 5 books now. And
wow,
I love that series. It is not Harry Potter in any form or fashion.
Right.
But I love it, you know. So
well, and she took a pen name. So that is a little bit of a different scenario. And I think there are still people who don't realize that she's writing. I saw Casual Vacancy recently in a bookstore and it had her name on it. So I thought maybe she had embraced that. But it may have been a written by J.K. Rowling as blank.
Maybe
whatever.
maybe that's where it was a very poorly kept secret.
Yeah,
it was a pen name.
And I think the idea was in part, you know, Rowling wanted to see if it was just her name selling the books or if, you know, she was good at this. And I think a lot of lessons were probably learned there. But here's the lesson I think all authors should take from it is it doesn't matter whether you're really good or it's just your name that's selling the book. Your name selling the book is what you want. You know,
exactly.
That's where your platform begins. You know, if your reach is there's a Kevin Tumlinson novel out, and people who love to read Kevin Tumlinson novels are going to love to read it, whether it's science fiction or fantasy or thriller or something else. You know, when I put something else out that isn't quite in the same vein as Dan Kotler, you know, does everyone just love it? No. Some of my list comes back and says, I didn't like Evergreen, or I didn't like, you know, Alex Kane or whatever.
Yeah. Actually,
no one has told me they don't like Alex Kane. In fact, I think more people like that series than the Kotler series. But funny. They don't, you know, there are people who are just, they want, when they go to McDonald's, they want a quarter pounder. They don't want the McTasty or whatever it is. That's just the way consumers are.
Yeah. So. That's so funny. I've seen you know, stories of famous musicians' kids or famous actors' kids, and they change their name because, you know, they're like, I don't
want to make it on their own.
Yeah, I want to make it on my own, and I am not here for that. Give me the nepotism. I am here for it.
Yeah. That's why I write under the name Stephen King Jr.
Oh, that's so funny.
Elroy Grisham.
Elroy Grisham. Oh, so Kevin, your other hat that you wear is you are the director of marketing for Draft to Digital. How did you wind up in that gig?
So I used to have a podcast called the Word Slinger Podcast.
The Word Slinger.
I love that show, but I did sort of put it on permanent hiatus in tag end of 2020 because I just had too much other stuff happening, and I felt like that show I'd kind of gotten what I was after with that show. I felt like I'd done what I wanted to do, but I had interviewed at one point Dan Wood, who is from Draft to Digital. And at the end of our call, we were chatting, and I said, hey, look, I do marketing. I have a marketing company that I've started. I do copywriting and things like that. If you guys ever need help with your marketing, let me know. And they reached out to me a couple of weeks later. They had lost their director of marketing. They were launching Universal Book Links was going to be a new release, and they wanted to know if I could help them with that launch. And so I came on board and I helped them. And really by the time, by the end of the first month, they'd already offered me the gig, the director gig. And so that's been 6 years as of this past July.
So you came over to help and just never left.
Never left. Yeah. It was a good fit. I have a mission statement, and I have a goal. Part of what I want to be able to do is give back to this community. And so I've done that in a lot of different ways, but, Drafted Digital fit right in the slot for how to give back to the author community. It's been, there's, it's changed quite a bit since I started. We acquired Smashwords. We are the biggest now. I mean, we just are.
It was huge news.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much that we do now that is so beneficial to the author community. And it's good to be a part of it. I don't know whether I'll forever be Drafted Digital, but I mean, I don't have any reason to leave yet. So they're not tired of me yet. So
hey, that's always a good thing. We recently had Alex from K-Lytics on, and we were talking about data driven, using data in your publishing business. Now, he's talking specifically about publishing for Kindle and on Amazon. And there's a whole business that's been built on publishing for KU and staying in that narrow focus. And a lot of people are successful like that. But Drafted Digital, it focuses on publishing wide for the most part, or at least the option of publishing wide. From your vantage point, what are the benefits of publishing wide versus being locked into the Amazon ecosystem?
I mean, just as a start, you're reaching more of the world than you do through Amazon. Amazon, I think at this point, it's like 13 markets worldwide. And that is it. That's not even, that's like, even though they're the biggest marketplace on the planet, that's maybe a tenth of the readers in the world. And so, when I started publishing, I had my intention was to get my books in front of as many people worldwide as possible. So that part of that mission is going wide. But I mean, the real advantages are you're not dependent on one company. And the truth is, and let's just be brass tacks about this. Like the truth is, if you are exclusive to Amazon and KDP Select, you get a lot of advantages that can be quite financially lucrative. Sure. But then your income becomes entirely dependent on that source. And as authors, we're told all the time that, you need to diversify your income. And I think that's true. And maybe it's not diversified enough by just going wide. But it's certainly more diversified than if you're stuck, limiting yourself to just the Amazon readers. Honestly, so I had books that were in KU forever because they were just money makers, and I didn't want to pull them. And over the past year and a half, 2 years, I've actually finally pulled everything out of KU. I've got like one or two things that are in there that are just, they're there because they're there. I mean, I'm not concerned about them. I wasn't trying to go wide with them necessarily, but the thing was, I discovered I had a strategy of, I'll put my books in KU, and then after 90 days, if I want to pull them out, I can, and I think that's not a terrible strategy. But the problem is that you are only cultivating Amazon readers at that point.
Right.
And so, people who pick up the book, like if I do a bunch of advertising, well, I can't advertise the book to anyone outside of Amazon because I'm wasting my money. Right. And people who get on my mailing list who, maybe got a free book and are interested in me, if they're not Amazon readers, they're going to unsubscribe to my list. So what was happening was I was watching my prospects get narrower and narrower. And that is exactly what Amazon wants you to do. They want you to limit yourself
Yeah.
to only them, and all your marketing is only for them. And you ultimately, when everything is said and done, you have a nicely curated list of Amazon readers, and if you go wide, you have to start completely over, which is exactly what happened to me. I had very few readers on my list who bought from other platforms. Still do. Amazon is still overwhelmingly the biggest chunk of my platform.
Yeah.
So, it's been a tough road over the past like 2 years trying to expand that. And it's slowly growing, but it is not growing as quickly as I would have liked, which means that if I had started earlier,
Well, that's a question that I have. If someone is in KU and signed up for KDP Select, and they decide to go wide,
yeah.
I would imagine, this is just a theory of mine, that initially they're going to take a hit in sales and
Yeah.
they're going to drop, while it takes time to recover to
Well,
build up that wide market. What advice do you give people
first
to stick out the doldrums?
Yeah, let's correct the record slightly,
Okay.
because there's a good chance that even when you if you just pulled all your books from KU, there's a really good chance that for a time you'd still get page reads, because there's a lot of people who check out a book from KU who don't read it right away.
Right.
So you could still continue to do that. The trouble with pulling out and going wide is that you are completely starting over with your marketing and your initiative and your momentum there. Okay. So one thing that I would recommend after my experience is if all your books are KU, start letting them lapse out of KU and go and keep them on Amazon. And then start advertising as quickly as you can, as much as you can, to start building up your mailing list for non-KU readers, people on other platforms. And I would concentrate on one platform at a time, honestly. Concentrate on Apple, concentrate on Barnes & Noble, Kobo, whatever it is that you think would give you the best odds. But focus all your energy on that first. Keep them wide everywhere, but keep your marketing focused on that one platform, because that's how you're going to ultimately replace Amazon as your income, or at least substitute, what you're losing. But then I would take your books and just basically do a whole new launch, one book at a time, and do them as rapid release. So if you've got 3 books or 5 books or something, start letting them come out of KU, and then start put that first one up as an offer right away, and start putting the others up as pre-order on all the platforms that will take it right away. And then, make sure you're advertising or a call to action or something in that book for the next book, and just kind of keep stacking that way. And basically you are starting over. So
yeah,
do it the way you would do it. If you came into this business with 5 books already written and ready to go, use a rapid release strategy like that.
Yeah.
And to fine tune all of your advertising. First of all, I tell authors all the time to focus less on trying to sell books through ads and more on building up your mailing list through ads. Because if you can get your mailing list built up big enough, it will become your advertising platform.
Ads, right. Exactly.
You don't have to spam everybody every month with a buy my book ad, but just having a little footer in your emails that says, hey, you can find my books here. Write a nice personable email that has nothing to do with selling a book, and have links to buy your books in the bottom of every email, and you're no longer spamming your list. You're just talking to them and engaging them.
That's fantastic advice. If someone has a book or a series of books that are doing moderately well to well in KU,
yeah,
would you recommend them taking that wide, or would you recommend them waiting for a new series and just going wide with that, so that you don't
one
have
strategy that you can use that I could have used and didn't, but thinking back on it, I think this would really be good.
Yeah.
If you've got the juice to do it,
Yeah.
Start writing and producing a series outside of KU and leave your other one in for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing you might do is, if you need the continuous, new release, start going to a once every other release. Like, so every other, on my Kotler books, I would write a Kotler book, and then the next month I'd write and produce a Alex Kane book and release that one wide, and then the next month I do another Kotler book, and then the next month I do another Kane book. And, it's, if you can get ahead of it, it's even better.
Right.
Like if you could write that second series and get 3 of those books written and ready to go before you start releasing them, you will fare much better. But if you're impatient like me, you could just flip flop every month. But you need to be consistent about it. But that way, you're still building up your money making series, but you're also starting to appeal to a wider audience and start advertising that book. Don't spend less time advertising to sell your other series and more time advertising the new series, and get people hooked on that. Do a short story based in that world that gets people on your mailing list. Focus all your energy on, like I said, pick a retailer.
Right.
And when that retailer, and I would set goals like, okay, I'm going to focus on Kobo, and when I get to where I have 3 books in Kobo and I've gotten, and I'm getting $2,000 per release minimum, then I will start concentrating on Apple, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And just, build that way. And that's another long tail strategy, which, it's pretty much every strategy I have. But I will say this, anything I've ever tried that was, quick growth is blown up in my face 100% of the time.
Well, and we've talked a lot lately about the, that time a decade or 12 years ago when the Kindle revolution was really taking off, and you had all the Kindle millionaires who would just write a book in a weekend, throw it up there with no editing, with a cover they made in Microsoft Word, and all of a sudden they were millionaires.
Right.
And very few of those people are still in the game, or you don't hear much about them.
If they are still in the game, they've adapted. Like they're not doing that anymore.
Exactly, because that doesn't work anymore. And you could argue whether it ever worked at all, aside from a few random cases.
A lot of those folks benefited from the novelty of that system coming into existence, and there being a lack of material for people. So if you're not going to succeed that way anymore. You need, I'm not even going to say that you need to pay for covers or things like that. I mean, there's lots of ways to get around. If you are a no overhead author, which is the majority of people I talk to, there are plenty of resources out there to help you with cover design, editing, things like that cost little to nothing. And engaging
every year
friends
there's
is
more
a
and
good
more.
idea. Yeah. I mean, there's a, I forget the name of the thing. Midjourney. Midjourney is a AI graphic tool, right?
Really?
Where you can, it's run on a Discord server, but you go in and you type in this sequence of commands, and you can tell it basically everything you want in an image, and it'll create an image that looks like something produced by, one of these digital artists. And you can pay as little as $10 a month to use that service. So I'm looking at that like, okay, well, my next cover is going to feature an image that I design or that I have designed by artificial intelligence, right? So that's $10 a month. If you can't afford at least that much in overhead, I mean, I feel you. I've been there. But $10 a month with no obligation to keep doing it, but you can go on Canva, and I believe that they have a free account you can use, and one of their templates is an ebook cover.
And lots of royalty free stock art.
Tons of it. Now, don't just use the default stock art and text and everything that they give you with the template. I've seen people do that a lot, and that always ends poorly, because that means a million people are using that. But my advice on covers is go on Amazon, go to the bestseller list for the type of book you're trying to write or you want to publish, and then
Right.
screenshot all the thumbnails of covers. And then when
Right.
you go to either get your cover made or design your cover in Canva or whatever it is you're going to do, I want you to put that up on screen side by side with the cover that you're trying to build. And I want you to honestly evaluate and even get some people engaged in this, get them come look at it and say, and tell you whether or not your cover looks in any way like those covers.
Right.
They don't have to be identical, but they need to look like, it needs to look like it would fit in that group of covers.
You want to mimic the tone.
Yeah.
Because
covers are one of those places where absolute originality is actually unfavorable to you.
Right.
If you do something just so original that it doesn't look like it fits that genre, because readers are looking for books that are familiar.
Right.
They just read, this John Grisham. They just read Camino Winds from John Grisham, and they want a book just exactly like that. Well, if your book looks more like robots in a spaceship, they're not going to buy it.
No.
So
you're right. In all of the marketing work that you've done with people and helping them to dial in their marketing, is there something that is a common mistake or something that authors overlook, especially we're talking about indie authors and people that are bootstrapping their whole author life? Is there something that people often overlook or are just doing wrong?
They spend more time doing things like, trying to sell the book than building their platform. The platform is where it's going to happen. You remember Arrested Development?
Yeah.
That show?
Yep.
Remember how when the father was in prison and they went and he was, I forget the actor's name now, but he went to see him. Michael went to see him in prison, and he kept saying the money is in the banana stand. Remember that?
Yes.
And then it turned out the money literally was like lining the walls of the banana stand. Well, the money is in the platform. If you want money as a writer, you spend time building your platform deep and wide. You want as many people on that platform as you can get, and you want them qualified. Like you want them, if they came in because they liked your short story, that's a good thing, right? You gave them something free and they came and got on your list and they stayed on your list after the first, autoresponder sequence or the first email you sent out or whatever. You've got a pretty good lead there. And an even better lead is when you send out that email, if that person clicks on the link to buy, even if they don't buy, they're a good lead. So your energy needs to be, how do I build up the biggest, widest, deepest mailing list of ideal readers that I can build? And that's where all your creative energy needs to go when it comes to marketing. If you don't do anything, if you spend any money at all on marketing for the first, I'll go as far as to say the first 3 years, spend it on building up your mailing list. And I mean a platform ultimately is your ability to reach a reader, right? Doesn't matter what that is. So that includes your email list. It also includes social media. It includes standing in the line of the grocery store, right? But the strength of your platform is that mailing list. So that's your all or nothing. That's your Hail Mary. That's the entire banana stand when it comes down to it.
Great advice. We at Dabble develop software to help people write their books. Our whole goal is to get people to make a tool that is inviting, is easy to use, and helps you get the story out of your head and onto the page.
Yeah.
For when you're finished with that, an organization like Drafted Digital then helps you take that finished book and do what with it? What's the goal and purpose?
You've just Dabble just helped you generate your completed manuscript, and then you took that and you went to and you got it edited and you got a cover designed and you did all the things that you're told you're supposed to do. Yeah. You bring all that to Drafted Digital. Your manuscript, you can bring your manuscript to Drafted Digital as a Word file or an RTF file or even a pre-formatted EPUB if you use Vellum or David Cheston's new Atticus or something like that. You can format your own EPUB. That's fine too. If you don't have a formatted EPUB, we will automatically format your book as an ebook. When I used to say as EPUB and Mobi, but now Mobi's going away. That's Amazon's proprietary format, so that's going away. So it's all EPUB now. We'll automatically format that book for you in that file format, and it takes like less than 10 minutes to do that. Actually, that part happens in like 30 seconds. And then from there, if you have your ebook cover, you upload that, and we'll package all that together. We've got some options for you. If you're coming in with an EPUB, you miss out on a few of our cool tools, but not all of them. But we take care of what they call your front matter and end matter. We'll do that stuff for you automatically. The about the author, all that stuff gets taken care of for you. Table of contents, all that. And then we'll convert that into an EPUB, and then you can actually choose your layout from our cool little layout tools that we have, very much like Vellum. If it's an EPUB, you don't bother with that. And then from there, you can set your price and pick all the storefronts you want to distribute to and hit publish. And usually within a day or two, that book is at almost every retailer. You can go to all the major retailers. We have systems to get your book into libraries worldwide. We've got some that are focusing exclusively on Australia and Germany and Italy. And so we literally we've calculated it. We'll get your book into a storefront in literally every country in the world, including now, if your book is considered illegal in that country, there's nothing we're going to be able to do. But for the most part, if you've got a pretty tame book that's not erotica or not, calling for the overthrowing of a certain government or whatever, then your book is available everywhere. And that's pretty much it. And then we consolidate all the sales reporting and that sort of thing. We will support you. I'm telling you, we're known as indie author support. We have people who reach out to us to help with problems that, don't even distribute through us. And we can't help you if you don't distribute through us, but we do have people who reach out sometimes, but
we can be sympathetic.
We'll give you, we might be able to offer some advice,
Right.
And we have a growing list of promotional tools. Our books to read stuff is all about promoting yourself. We've got a promotions manager who goes and sets up promotions with the retailers, and all that stuff is kind of new, but it's all growing. And now that we have Smashwords, we're getting ready. Pretty soon, we're going to get all the DDD authors and their books will be in the Smashwords store. And let me tell you something, Hank, the Smashwords store is officially, once the DDD books are in there, it's officially the largest indie author storefront in the world.
Wow.
Online or offline, and will give you the highest royalty of any storefront in the world. It's like 85% royalty, maybe even up to 90%, depending. And you're never going to get a better, higher royalty than that. That's the indie author store now. So I'm really excited about that one. That one's going to be cool.
Yeah. And now is that available now, or is that in the process of rolling?
I mean, if you come in, there's a lot more to it than people might think, but we're very close. So within the next couple of months, we're going to be able to flip the switch and start migrating everybody over. I'm one of the guinea pigs, so some of my books are kind of floating around in there. It's a different interface than what we have, so we're also kind of looking at how do we revamp the interface so that it works for everybody, but also allow the people who are familiar with and used to Smashwords to have the sort of Smashwords classic.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to happen pretty soon. I mean, that, and we have Ddd Print, which is our POD service. Print on demand is releasing full sometime this year. It's actually already fully powered and ready to go. We've been trying to solve the author copy problem. If you're outside of the US and you order author copies, your customers get their books the price you ask, and
Yeah.
you get it in the same time frame and everything. That's no problem. The reader has no issues. But the authors, if I'm in Australia and I order, even one copy of my book, it could
Right.
cost me $100. And so that's because of shipping, because
Right.
the printer doesn't have any printers there yet. So we've been
Gotcha.
working on that, and we've solved it. And now it's just a matter of dotting I's and crossing T's, and holding their
Excellent.
jaw just right.
Excellent news. You mentioned earlier the universal links, which is one of the coolest features that Ddd came up with. Tell people what that is. And
so it's the thing that when I started, this is the first thing I had a hand in releasing, and I didn't have anything to do with making it, but it's exactly as it's described, a universal book link. It is an evergreen link that sends readers to all the different versions of your book everywhere they're sold. When we started, it was only ebooks, but now it includes print, and not just print, but large print, hardcover, audiobooks. All that stuff is in there now. Some of it's a little more manual than others. If you want to have all the audiobook stuff, that's all manually entered. But I've done it, and it doesn't take very long to do. But that you can customize that link. So, I have, for example, bookstoread.com/evergreen. And so if you type that into a URL, it's going to take you to a little landing page that shows you all the storefronts where you can buy my book and all the different formats. And you can click on the one you want, and you can even set it as your default. And one of the things so you can customize the URLs. That's one thing. One of the things I really dig is, I have affiliate accounts with different retailers.
Sure.
So like Amazon Associates and Apple and all these different retailers. Well, you can embed those affiliate links in your universal book links. So when someone goes to Amazon and if they buy your book, you get a little bit extra kickback. But if they go on and buy like a refrigerator or a new computer or something, you get a kickback from that too. And so it's a nice way to kind of pad your income a little.
Absolutely. And it's a whole lot easier to get someone to remember a human readable link that you helped design than just giving someone the amazon.com/UW capital G,
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're doing different, like I said, this is an evergreen link. So if new stores come up later, you just refresh
automatically populates.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And so the link so that means you can use that link on social media, but you could also put it on a billboard if you wanted. You could put it on your business cards, or wear it on a t-shirt, and it'll always be active. It'll always point them to where your book is. That's just that was a game changer.
Oh yeah. And you need to do that just because that's good business, period.
It is good business. It's free. And what's funny is how authors on the internet are, like they go straight to conspiracy theories. They go straight,
Oh yeah.
So I have seen, they have no idea that we watch everything, right? Like Kboards is not as much of a thing anymore, but when Kboards was around, we released universal book links, and I used to see people post things like, you don't want to use universal book links because that's a violation of Amazon's policy, because you have to own your page or whatever. And of course, Amazon's one of our retailers. We have a great relationship with them. We wouldn't build something that was against their policy,
obviously.
So people come up with all kinds of crazy stuff, and they'll show you quote unquote proof, but it's usually they went and broke the rules somewhere and got nailed for it. I get told all the time that people don't want to use those links in their emails because of Amazon's policy. And I'm like, I have been using those links for 6 solid years. And I've never gotten, I've gotten a ding when I've accidentally sent out the Amazon link, the Amazon associate link instead of sending a UBL. I've gotten dinged on that, but I've never gotten dinged on the UBL because it has its own landing page.
Right.
Which is entirely the point. That's why that's there. So, yeah. So people are funny.
They are. Kevin, this has been a super fast hour. Thank you so much for joining me today and just catching up.
Absolutely.
This is fun.
Yeah, man.
Let's
Yeah.
do it again. Tell people where they can find you and all the stuff that you're into online.
Me, you can find actually everything related to everything I've said, you could find at kevintumlinson.com. But where you'll also find a link to Draft to Digital at drafttodigital.com. So, and that's draft2digital.com.
And I'll link up that stuff in the show notes when we republish this and make it easy for folks to find you. Kevin, thanks for joining me today.
Anytime, man. I'm always glad to talk to you.